Hey, good evening, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary. Back after a few weeks, been a little bit off and on, so if it feels like our first date, it's not quite like that, but it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk, share some ideas about the city of Galleon and where we're going over the near term, and begin to, we try to always do in this little live stream, generate some thoughts about where the community goes over the next handful of years or on into the future. So anyway, good to be back. I want to start by talking about something that's going to happen on the 27th, which is Wednesday, and that is it's recognition and additional promotion of the drive-through food pantry that's going to be going on at the middle school. It's kind of nice for the city to be involved in this partnership, which the school or the National Guard or Second Harvest provide the staffing for these drive-through food pantries. Over the next several months, your CARES Act dollars channeling through the city will be the money that buys the food and continues this really awesome effort. Say what you want about the schools, they've really done a phenomenal job. Because I know I imagine it's frustrating as a parent, and this "we're doing the best we can" explanation gets a little bit frustrating to parents. But I'll tell you what, the effort that is kind of the above and beyond effort that's been put in to make sure that people in this community, particularly the young kids in the community, are getting fed. It's pretty extraordinary. And you'd only have to look and check around the state or around other communities throughout the country to see what's going on as far as feeding just about everybody who expresses a need in the school age. Those young people getting fed, it's pretty cool what they're accomplishing over there at Galleon Schools. So anyways, 27th, it's 3:30 to 5:30, I'm told, and I imagine it's the same drill, if you will, that has been how you kind of get in line and go through that process out there. So really good things happening in Galleon, recognizing the major overall politics of this pandemic and slowdown in the economy and all of those related things. It really, in our community, it's about the community taking care of itself and each other, and so that's a pretty neat thing. So wanted to mention that on the 27th. I've already thrown credits to Reverend Ash Welsh at St. Paul. The last Saturday, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, they were freaking lined up, and so those of us who have not been real affected about our ability to bring food to the table and those things, it's an ongoing need in the community. And as the most recent federal legislation, the one that we got $600 from, that one, as the local government assistance part of that, state and local government assistance part of that legislation becomes a little better understood, and whether or not it's largely the same rules that apply to providing support, or if it's a whole new set of rules. We're trying to stay on top of that, and my expectation is and hope is that we'll have some more dollars to support, first of all, families in the community, utility customers in the community, and then generally government services and things like that. So anyway, 27th, be there. If I was running for office, I'd probably go out and shake hands and tell everybody thank you. But anyways, who knows what will happen this year as far as the issue of it is interesting that May 3rd is the filing deadline, and so as I begin to talk a little about a couple of other major decisions that will be made at City Hall over the next couple of months, it's hard to separate that from the kinds of issues that potential council members or mayoral candidates or whatever may be, may take positions on issues like how we use how we use the CARES Act, and then as I spoke a little prematurely, how we intend to use the freeze dollars in the future. So anyway, good things on the 27th, and I really think that there's been quite a bit of conversation. You know, when you're talking through Facebook, it's a fairly safe assumption that the people who are touched by this, either through the live stream or in sharing our Facebook Galleonites who are in tune to Facebook. The topic of, the subject of the Free Center has, I think, for a bunch of really good reasons, remained a recurring topic. And so as you read those comments, there have been some comments made about ways to get additional feedback through the community. Idea of putting some sort of brief survey in the utility bills. I think it's a neat idea. I'm not sure how much new information you get, but I think it's something worth considering. One of the ideas that I've had is trying to bring in some of the proponents to do a little bit more thorough and discussion of what's at stake, what's being proposed, those sorts of things, and see if we can arrange in more of this live stream format versus a Zoom meeting. But I think in either way, to try to get some of the proponents available to interested residents, interested citizens, troublemakers and supporters by and large, far and near. So we're actively considering looking at a survey to try to gauge public opinion, public support for the idea. Because when you go on Facebook, that's really, one would get the impression that everybody is in favor of this, and gee, only a fool would have any questions. So I think that's probably doesn't line up real tightly or exactly with what you might find as public opinion at large. So my objective is, and then we'll get some questions, I hope there are some. My objective is to keep the idea of the Free Center as a top community priority. I don't even want to argue over whether it's a top community priority. However, I believe it's extremely important to move forward with this idea, similar to almost all the legislation that we've been able to pass over the last 8 years almost now. And so we've had the ability to form strong consensus, rarely there are more than 2 votes against something. And so my objective, equal to moving this project forward, is to make sure that we do so in a way that council is strongly in support of the project and how it's phrased and funded, and that we don't divide up, which is a pretty remarkable record of goodwill between the administration and city council, and quite honestly within city council. So I think that's an equal, not necessarily competing priority, but I think it will guide how we move forward on the request by the Port Authority, and how we get some of the other issues about the operations and raising the rest of the capital. Those issues I think are real important as we move forward. But if there's a guiding light, that's not too corny of an expression. If I have a guiding light on this, it's to make sure we do everything we can to keep a solid council support of whatever moves forward. So I guess I'll stop with that, Matt. I got all kinds of paper in front of me in case there's questions that come forward that paper can protect me from. So, if there are any questions, let's go ahead and get going.
I don't have any questions on the Freeze Center yet, but
Yeah,
we
go
do
ahead.
have a couple other topics.
Please,
that's
there's a
happening.
lot of other stuff going on. So,
Mhm.
yeah, go
All
ahead.
right. First one tonight came from Scott. He said, "Evening, Mayor O'Leary. I am working with youth softball and wondered if we were able to get help from the city with some appliances that got stolen from the concession stand. Last year was told we may be able to request freeze money."
Yeah, I think I would go through the freeze route. My hope, the I don't want to say ordinary. I guess it is ordinary. We've been at this 3 or 4 years where we solicit projects from 501c3s, not from nonprofits in the community. I know the softball organization is one of those things, or one of those organizations, and then we have a cost sharing on that. So, yeah, my recommendation, Scott, submit an application, then we'll have a discussion about how much of that is the softball association's loss and how much is needs to be the city's responsibility in terms of it is a city facility that your organization has an operating lease on. I'll take a quick breath and say that one of what I consider our top priorities for this year has to do with PICO, where the girls play, and we really need to spend some time and some money at looking at safety and other capital improvements. By and large, anything that's been done since that facility was constructed, that has been done to maintain or improvement, has been done by the local volunteer organization. So there are, without any criticism, there are things that need to be done out there at the PICO quad, and safety fencing, or netting right at the top of the list. So I know you guys got robbed, guys and gals got robbed. And so back to the original question, I would total that up, submit an application, or submit a request for funding, an application if you will, and follow that through. It's really both Matt and myself, one of our goals to get that process moving ahead for this year, that being the freeze process. There's also a lot of interest since he asked, but try to optimize, if you will, the use of those diamonds. One of the ideas that's probably not a real good idea is to try to mix some of the youth baseball, some of the travel baseball, where there's competition for fields, in with the girls' activities out at PICO. And it just doesn't seem to be a real good idea. So since it was mine, I'll be the first to say it's probably not how we're going to move ahead. However, we've got to do something to provide a little bit more quality diamond access for some of the now many teams that are functioning at both the kind of traditional Little League level, and some of them focused more on providing travel opportunities for Galleon area kids. So all of that being said, is we're probably going to look at a request for funding in a supportive way for making a big safety and functional improvements. Functional is probably not the best word, but trying to do some things to bring East Park back into shape for a range of baseball uses. And then also there are some people interested in adult softball, both co-ed and the more traditional competitive men's softball. So, gee, Scott, you ask about, yeah, you got some stuff ripped off. We're very have an open ear to that, but there's so much that needs to be done at PICO and East Park as well. So, all right, anything else?
Okay. If we could jump back to the Freeze Center.
Please,
now. I
yeah.
actually had 3 questions come in,
Imagine.
all involving how the project will be paid for, if you want to detail that.
Right. Okay, well, I'm not sure exactly what the questions are. The proposal, the request for funding from the Port Authority, it's ingenious in a lot of ways. And it's been evolving over a number of years, and anyone who becomes interested enough to dedicate a few hours to the archives, but go back and look at the meeting that would have been last Tuesday night, Economic Development Committee meeting. Bunch of things were said, a proposal was made, and the financial advisor, who I've known for a long time, it sounds, I can't say emphatically enough how smart of a guy Michael DePerna is, and how many different state programs, past, current, and probably future, that he's devised. And Michael was brought in early in this project. And one of the things that Mike said at the end of the discussion is that this is probably the only way. Maybe he didn't say only, but this is the way this project can get done. Okay. I won't detail it, but it has to do with the Freeze Board agreeing to buy $5 million worth of bonds that would be issued by the port in conjunction with the city's support. If it's such a great idea, why don't you borrow 6? Why don't you borrow the whole dang thing? Well, because $5 million, it turns out, is about all that the Freeze Foundation can debt serve and go ahead with the scholarships and at least have some cushion for individual projects going forward. Okay. So anyways, I think that's pretty sound. There'll be some areas that things won't happen like we've become used to. We're going to have to be better, not better, but we aren't going to have as many other freeze projects. Okay. But one of the things that I think is important that we keep looking at is that based on the estimates for the construction price, really even setting out aside of it the utility costs that we'll be looking at, council will for first time tomorrow night. The ports and supporters of the project still have a couple $1 million to go out and raise. And so what we found is that the Freeze Foundation can only carry about $5 million of debt. And if the project is going to be in the $6.5–7 million range, which I wouldn't be at all surprised, then there is a need to go out and raise some more money. So my hope is, and around which I think we can maybe get 5 or 6 votes on City Council, maybe all 7, is that the city pledges to do this $5 million request by the port, but that's contingent on the rest of the money being raised. And so I think something like that will go forward. But, as I was participating in the meeting and have read online on Facebook, have seen some things, this only gets us part of the way there. And there are a few more $1 million to be raised if we're going to be able to build the project that's moving ahead pretty moving ahead pretty fast in terms of the scoping and the details. So we have a little bit more money on the capital side, and we have the need to raise some money, firm up that commitment. And then the last thing I'd say, and I hope this tries to answer or anticipate some of the questions, we still have $1 million. I think the estimates, although they're pretty rough, have a lot of zeros associated with them. It's about $1.5 million for the infrastructure that needs to be built to go from where it is out at Valero, just north of the sleep-in, west back to the proposed project site. So that's a whole other component. I think a lot of time's being spent on that now in terms of how do we raise the money to have the infrastructure. Tomorrow night on council there'll be I believe a first reading of an ordinance that will authorize the funding of engineering for water, sewer, stormwater, and roadway. And so that, as I've said a few times before, maybe not tonight, but in other conversations, that'll be a little bit of a temperature taking, a test vote in terms of if council wants to go ahead and authorize spending about $90,000 for the engineering. That's a pretty good indication that they want to go ahead and put the infrastructure in, which then also might point towards support overall for that $5 million ask of the Freeze Foundation. It's basically a set aside. It's a real neat structure, and I don't think we would have come to that without using Michael DePerna. But it also, I think, has a lot of local input in terms of folks that contributed to how this thing could be funded if the support at council and the support at the Freeze Fund is there. So I'll wind down. It's like there's lights in front of me, like candidates night. You know, green, keep talking; yellow, start to shut up; and red, shut the heck up. So, all right.
Okay, a couple other questions on the Freeze Center.
Why, sure.
Josh wanted to know who will own the facility after it's complete.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think as proposed, it would be owned by the Port Authority. And the Port Authority is a creation, I don't even like that word, instrumentality. I like that even less. It's really, the Port Authority is a structure, an instrument of Galleon City government. So back to what Josh, what I was thinking about is having some of the proponents come in and we can talk about why the Port Authority versus the city ownership, but there's probably 8 or 9 minutes worth of explanation. But the short answer to your question is the way it's iterated, the way it's understood now, the building would be owned by the Port Authority.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. And then Jake also wanted to know, what is the cost of maintenance?
Wait, I hope that's not a Jake, I know, because I'm going to put on my glasses and look old real fast. One of the things that's going to be real important over the next several weeks or months is to go through this document. It's about 30 pages. And it has estimates that have been put together by a consultant at the port, the city, seems to be, I think, Experience Galleon. Those 3 organizations funded. And, dadgummit. Give me a second. What has been set aside for maintenance is the question, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. It's in here, a lot of numbers. I don't know what to tell you. I know what I'll tell you, Jake, is we'll get you that number after we go offline. My impression is that there's plenty of money in there. I do know that there's approximately $50,000 allocated for maintenance staff. So who's going to clean the place up? Is it going to be on the shoulders of the volleyball coach? Unlikely. I think there's a recognition that you'll have a close to full-time staff there. In terms of an initial allocation to have money for maintenance, I know it's in here, but it'd just produce a bunch of downtime. But we'll get you that number, pull it out of here. And, there was money. Everybody's an expert on this, but as I looked at it, it didn't seem like some of the outdoor maintenance, which I would consider the maintaining of a 300 plus space parking lot. That seemed a little low, but I think overall the question he's getting at is that been looked at? Is there money in the operating budget for that? Yes, there is. And what I want to do with as many people that are interested is go through both the revenues and when the place is leased, are those realistic rates? Will we have as you look through it, there are a number of, in each sport, a number of leagues that are proposed that would have X number of teams, and those number of teams grow, and a lot of the revenue that is projected off of this comes from that kind of rental. So I think we want to go through and proof that, and then on the cost side, do we have the costs right? Jake's point about maintenance, both for materials and also to have enough labor to make sure it's maintained, make sure the outside of the facility is maintained in a safe way, all that stuff. I think that part of the operating pro forma is pretty good to go. I think some of the revenues we'll end up debating that over the next several weeks. I hope I didn't over-answer that, Jake. There is a number, we'll try to get it up there. It's around 50 for staff. I'm not sure what's budgeted for, if you will, capital maintenance. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Uh-huh.
Next question tonight comes from Shirley. She asked, with things as they are now, do you think this is a good time to invest this much money?
Well, I think that's a very important question, and I think that collective we, the people, if you will, should be as fully informed as possible. In other words, if because of the last year, has the travel sports bubble either shrunk a little bit or burst and going to be a while to recover? I think that's a question a lot of folks have. I think that's why it's super important to make sure that whatever gets built, that it has local public use as its primary driver, so that it isn't contingent on, isn't dependent on travel sports, outside travel, big tournaments, because in that way you're vulnerable to how long it may take for things to recover. Now, having said that, I don't know if there's ever a good or bad time to execute on a well thought out idea that can make a difference in the community. So, those people trying to depict a political cartoon might see, Mayor Tom securely positioned, straddling the fence. I don't mean to come across that way because I've been an early proponent of it. But questions like Shirley's, making sure that the assumptions that were made in this report that's in front of me, goes back to 2018, we really need to spend the next few weeks looking at those numbers and making sure, being comfortable that they make sense in 2021, at least as much sense as they made back in 18. So I don't know. I hope that answers Shirley's question. It's there are risks involved, so setting this up so that the risks are balanced and minimized, absolutely necessary. So, go ahead. Anything? What else we got?
Okay, yeah, kind of a suggestion coming in from Tina. I think the way things are going now, meaning the city, better worry about getting business in town instead of just sending people north to 30.
Yeah, Tina, I think the argument for doing this is that is one of the best ways that the city can generate more business and more activity. So I'm not sure I buy all of the enthusiasm of some of the proponents. So this will be transformative. It'll start to bring in activity. There will be a direct link between redevelopment of Uptown and the success of this facility. I tend to maybe be a cold blanket or a wet blanket, I guess, on some of that conversation. But I think it's become really cliche. I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time. I think we can proceed ahead with this And I'd only argue or want to debate with Tina that that there's nothing being done to bring more jobs and investment in the community. I think I disagree with her. There's a lot of time spent, and I'm not sure that's exactly her point, but I think this idea, the Free Center, is real positive for the community, but I think it needs to be tempered or needs to be looked at realistically and not oversell it, and then 3-4 years from now, if you will, underdeliver on it. So that's if you will my posture. I think above and beyond anything else, we want to try to keep this notion of working together for the citizens that is reflective of most of what's been going on in city government the last 8 years. Make sure that continues. I have no interest in bringing up a big divisive issue around which people don't feel they've had a voice. So, what did you want me to do? I feel like I've missed part of that. What was it that? What aren't we doing that we should be focused on?
Just getting business in town instead of sending people north to 30.
Yeah, I think on the commercial side that's true. I think you have to have a balance between the uptown area, and I think very much interested in working with people who are invested in the uptown to try to increase investment up here. But having blabbered on about that for a second, someone comes in and for the first time since I can't remember is close to putting the Neisner property into a position where it can be redeveloped and moving forward. Now, just because that's out on Portland Way North a little bit, but don't count on me to shy away from that. I think that kind of development is also good for the community. I think we are spending a lot of time making sure that the existing job base is as solid as can be hoped for given these really uncertain times. So, I think it's multi-pronged. You have to work hard with your existing employers, make sure their needs, if you will, are being met. You want to develop, if you will, up by 30. I think there's a lot of good in that, nothing to apologize for. At the same time, there has to be developed a plan so that the uptown area doesn't slide into disrepair or be in the minds of locals not what it used to be. So I don't know, Tina. If I botched that answer, I apologize and come back at me. But I tried to give you a balanced answer. You got anything else?
Yeah, sticking
Good.
with jobs.
Yeah.
Colleen asked, how many jobs will the Free Center create for the city, and will the city give preference to Galleon residents applying for the job?
Well, I'll answer the second one first. However, the port decides to move ahead with staffing, I want the best person that someone can find. So when it comes to finding someone that can provide programming, that would be clinics and camps and tournaments in the various sports, may not find that kind of person in the Galleon community. When it comes to the support staff that it takes to run the facility, yeah, I would sure think that somebody who is a local would be a huge cheerleader, if you will, whether that was in maintenance, custodial, or any kind of limited staffing that we'll have. The jobs that are associated with it will be probably as many 1099s, which would be a whole lot of refereeing jobs. There's been a lot of time spent in the last few weeks looking at how concessions are funded. I don't know where that will be, but I do expect food service to be an important part of that because, as Tina pointed out, it's out there at 30. It's not close to some other businesses. But I would think that most of the jobs will be part-time, and as it relates to the few full-time jobs on maintenance, custodial, reception, administrative support, yeah, I'd sure hope that we'd find some solid people from the community for those jobs. I think I glossed over the first part of that. Did I hit it or not?
Just how many jobs?
Yeah, I don't think it is its economic development is in generating its economic development benefits are not in direct jobs, but the opportunity for jobs that are generated because it's there.
Okay. Next question, Loopy asked,
Yeah.
can there be a public meeting regarding the sports complex?
I think that's a neat idea, Loopy. I think that that sometimes this format is a little feeble when it comes to being able to get enough feedback to make decisions. I think the idea that had been floated over the last couple of days to put a survey in the utility bills, I think it's a good one. And I'm interested in how you bring a relatively large group of folks together, how you can do that, whether you have constituent groups, because I think that the school constituencies, whether boosters club or parents group, have some important questions. You'd want to avoid a public meeting that turned into anything that got spun up and out of control. I think that has to do with the kinds of people that come to it, but it's a good idea. There are people, I would say, on council, just sort of what you mentioned, Loopy, but who believe that this issue generally, the voters should have a say in that. And I don't think we're there yet, but in terms of, that's how it's going to be, but I wouldn't rule that out. That we'll have the ultimate of public meetings, and that would be some sort of vote on a resolution of support or funding. So I hope that answers your question, Loopy. If we could get 200 people together and be COVID, be cool with the COVID and all that social distancing, I wouldn't rule it out. The Zoom it limits the number of people, so it's a good suggestion. We'll noodle on it, because I think whether it's representative groups that have people in a large Zoom meeting, or you solicit information from different constituencies, I think it's a really good idea. I think I'm not on council, but I think it's important. I think the council members I've talked to are looking for feedback. I think they want to represent more than their opinion on this. So it's a good idea, Lou. You keep thinking about it. We'll try to figure out how to work around limitations on public meetings and get some real feedback. I'm going to rattle on for one more second. That's why part of me said, even if we're sitting here for an hour, if we had a couple of representatives, the three of us, and we'll get socially distanced, I'm wondering whether or not this format, because we all know sometimes it fails, I start yelling at Matt, and we're all frustrated when it freezes up or whatever. It's not perfect, but what I found is it does have a bit of interaction, and that might be a way to have Port Authority members hear from folks that have legitimate questions. Hell, it's got to the point where if you ask a question, you're somehow you're against it. And I think we want to avoid slipping into a cancel culture where if you disagree with somebody, you totally ignore what they have to say. So I'd like to see this be an exercise in trying to get voices that are less prominent, less engaged in travel sports, those people, but who are supportive of recreation in the community, get those various opinions voiced. So, all right, Luke, good question. We'll try to figure out how to have that public meeting. It's a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. That is actually all the questions on the Free Center, but I do have
Oh,
one
good.
more topic to
Good.
throw out to you.
Please do.
Chris and Dawn were both wanting to know if there has been any headway made on a grocery store or any other updates.
Well, really, as I'd mentioned a couple different times in a couple of ways, the best. What will happen is that in the short term there'll be a new owner of the property out there where Save-A-Lot is, and then from there there'll be a little bit uncertain, but what I expect is the 2021 outcome out there is that there'll be a significant investment in modernizing what we know as a Save-A-Lot. I think it's probably going to be a Save-A-Lot. But it will be expanded, and that I think is a step forward. It's not maybe what some folks want in terms of a new freestanding grocery, but a modernized existing one. I think that's a real good thing. Really not much in terms of news to report about Galleon West. We're in contact intermittently with the owner of Galleon West about a new grocery store in the old Galleon property, the old Guyers property. And then the third thing to report, and it's in the early stages, is that over the first 3 or 4 months of 21, I expect the city to acquire the property on Harding Way East that is gotten pretty run down, has some holes in the roof, and acquire that, clear that site, and begin to market it with some maybe adjacent properties as a potential grocery store just east of the tracks on Harding Way. So that's the best we got. I'll be the first to report and take all the credit imaginable if we could land a new grocery store, but I really think our best odds are to work on the strategy that we have until we have either that proves out or we have developed improvements at Save-A-Lot and perhaps a new grocery store here in the near, just east of City Hall. So that's what I got on the grocery store.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. That's all the questions I had for tonight, but I just wanted to point out Heath had a pretty good comment, just kind of tying all this together. I appreciate the work the mayor has done to not only recruit a grocery store, but to balance the needs for parks improvement with support for Galleon small businesses. The small business community in Galleon needs support, and all of our efforts with the Free Center will help support business in Galleon.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I would say that I would only add to that we are beginning to think through the details of the Park Square improvements. We have confirmed that we are going to receive the grant through the state capital bill, and part of the discussion that we'll have, I've really begun trying to get that going with Chamber, is whether or not we want to do some overall uptown redevelopment planning, or whether we want to move ahead with stuff on a project by project basis. In other words, should we just do the best we can with the money for the sidewalks and with Park Square? Those are two pools of funds the city has committed now. Or should we sit down with other owners in the uptown area, other business owners, other property owners, and think of sort of a bigger redevelopment, maybe a more ambitious, more complex in terms of funding, multi-year, multi-phase uptown area. So we'll begin talking about what we can do. I know that was little bit of the thrust of Tina's question, to make sure that we we don't lose track of development in the rest of the community. I mean, it's not just out at 30. So, all right, with that, the council meeting tomorrow night, the biggest issue in my view, a little bit of cleaning up of Portland Way real estate issues, some fine tuning on the budget, and probably the biggest issue of policy is whether or not council wants the service director to go ahead and develop plans for the additional infrastructure out at the Free Center, the proposed Free Center complex. So, okay, I'm gonna go rest my voice, y'all, unless there are any more questions.
Nope.
Glad to be back. Sorry I was a little bit ill, and Ohio State's more important than anything I've got to say. So it's been a couple, 3 Mondays. Good to be back, and always want to try to do the best we can with this. It's a kind of a fun way to communicate with the citizenry. So got to be back on Facebook. Got to marry some people today. Good day for Mayor Tom. So good night and thank you.